Welcome to The Poetry Joint, a podcast about poets, poems, and poetics. My name, Stephen Donahue. I have a scant knowledge of poetry, and that is the starting point for this podcast, to see what I can learn.
There's a light on in the attic. I can see it from the outside, and I know you're on the inside. Looking out.
Exploring good poetry, bad poetry, sonnets, couplets, ballads, rhyme, no rhyme, grand verse, silly verse, concrete poetry, liquid poetry, words with meaning, words without meaning, old poets, young poets, radical poets, ancient poets, contemporary poets, confessional poets.
Angel-headed hipsters, burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night.
The Poetry Joint. Hang out. See where we go. The world of poetry is filled with epic tomes. The Epic of Gilgamesh, Argonautica, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Divine Comedy, Paradise Lost, the Mahabharata, the Ike Monogatari, and more. Recently, works like Omeros by Derek Walcott, the Iovis Trilogy by Anne Waldman. Myself, I have only read those epics ascribed to Homer, and that was probably a while ago. However, a recent conversation made the idea of reading an epic-style poem more interesting. Calgary's fourth poet laureate, Sheri-D Wilson, has written a new book of poetry, which, because of its length, will be published as a trilogy. I'll let her explain. You wanted to talk about your new book, Oneironaut?
Yes, the Oneironaut one. It is kind of epic poetry in the sense of it is 600 pages long, the poem itself. It's a straight through narrative, and so that kind of, there is a war. There are these elements of the actual epic poem that I have followed, and also taking into account not only the Greeks, but also Anne Carson and Waldman and other people, women specifically, who have written epic poems that I have enjoyed and admire. To strict anything, and I'm like, no, I stick to strict nothing. I take different aspects of things and I amalgamate it into what my body and my spirit and my mind tell me to do. So I wrote the 600 pages and I give it to my publisher, who's like, nobody's going to be able to hold this book. It's going to be way too heavy. And I was like, what to do? And he was like, well, how about a trilogy? We'll make it into 3 books. That way they'll be attainable, they'll be readable, and you can hold them. And I didn't want to really call it an epic poem because to me it has epic aspects. So I didn't say in the description epic, but I know that other people have. I call it speculative poetry because to me, that's what it is. And I know that it's a rarely used term and not a form that has been played in a lot. Me on this trip, and it was a wild trip. And it's still taking me on a trip. It just is relentless. It will not leave me alone. And it didn't leave me alone from the day that I started it. It was some kind of obsessive, strange. I would wake up in the morning and I would make my crazy coffee and I would like run to the keyboard because I couldn't, I literally was, I was like, Ginsberg called it the epiphany. I was in this state of epiphany and I couldn't stop. And then it is sci-fi, I would say, verges on that sci-fi realm. Speculative was the closest I could come to pinpointing it. And like one of my heroes of all time heroines of all time was and is Ursula K. Le Guin. I've never written in that realm at all, although I did track her down and had breakfast with her one day because she really is one of my heroes. Okay. And I like to meet my heroes.
Sheri-D has provided some more background for her Oneironaut, and we'll get back to that. As part of another conversation, Sheri-D mentioned the poet Diane de Prima and suggested a poem of de Prima's for me to listen to. So, pardon the interruption. I think it fits. Here's Diane de Prima reading her poem, Rant.
You cannot write a single line without a cosmology, a cosmogony laid out before all eyes. There is no part of yourself you can separate out saying, this is memory, this is sensation, this is the work I care about, this is how I make a living. It is whole. It is a whole. It always was whole. You do not make it so. There is nothing to integrate. You are a presence. You are an appendage of the work. The work hangs from the heaven you create. Every man, every woman carries a firmament inside, and the stars in it are not the stars in the sky. Without imagination, there is no memory. Without imagination, there is no sensation. Without imagination, there is no will, desire. History is a living weapon in your hand, and you have imagined it. It is thus that you find out for yourself. History is the dream of what can be. It is the relation between things in a continuum of imagination. What you find out for yourself is what you select out of an infinite sea of possibility. No one can inhabit your world, yet it is not lonely. The ground of imagination is fearlessness. Discourse is videotape of a movie, of a shadow play, but the puppets are in your hand, your counters in a multidimensional chess which is divination and strategy. The war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. The ultimate famine is the starvation of the imagination. It is death, to be sure, and the undead seek to inhabit someone else's world. The ultimate claustrophobia is the syllogism. The ultimate claustrophobia is it all adds up. Nothing adds up, and nothing stands in for anything else. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. There is no way out of the spiritual battle. There is no way you can avoid taking sides. There is no way you can not have a poetics. No matter what you do, plumber, baker, teacher, you do it in the consciousness of making or not making your world. You have a poetics. You step into the world like a suit of ready-made clothes, or you etch in light. Your firmament spills into the shape of your room, the shape of the poem, of your body, your loves. A man's life, a woman's life is an allegory. Dig it. There is no way out of the spiritual battle. The war is the war against the imagination. You can't sign up as a conscientious objector. The war of the worlds hangs here, right now, in the balance. It is a war for this world, to keep it a veil of soul-making. The taste in all our mouths is the taste of our power, and it is bitter as death. Bring yourself home to yourself. Enter the garden. The guy at the gate with the flaming sword is yourself. The war is the war for the human imagination, and no one can fight it but you, and no one can fight it for you. The imagination is not only holy, it is precise. It is not only fierce, it is practical. Men die every day for the lack of it. It is vast and elegant. Intellectus means light of the mind. It is not discourse. It is not even language. The inner sun, the polis is constellated around the sun. The fire is central.
Diane de Prima, where does imagination take you? Sheri-D talked a bit more about the Oneironaut and the imagination that energizes that work. Going back to the Oneironaut, what is the reader going to experience as they read it?
Oh, well, I hope they experience, that would be the ultimate goal, really. If I could write such that people did experience it, that would be the feeling that you're experiencing something from reading it would be so excellent. I would love that. There are two main worlds. There's the totalitarian world, ruled by the Department of Dreams, the DoD, who have basically closed down X City and made it impossible for anyone to dream, and have enforced the law that everyone has to take a metanoia pill. Meanwhile, the counter realm is called Sweven, and Sweven, Sweven, the word Sweven means to dream. In Sweven, that's where all of the dreamers have run to, all of the Nox chieftains and the Oneironauts, and they're living off the grid. They are trying to survive a world that has basically exiled them. In X City, the Willows, who live in Sweven, are a group of, let's say, organic ritualists. They could be conceived, or they could be perceived as witches. They may or may not, got that in there, boom, and they may or may not make invocations that direct things to happen. Because they are the ultimate dreamers, they have the ability to make things happen in other realms. In X City, someone who has been employed gainfully and followed all the rules and taken all of her pills, for some reason stops taking her pill that morning. Her name Rain, she goes into her repetitive job and quits, and tells them basically in no uncertain terms that she's not coming back. And so that's where the journey kind of begins, although like surrealism, it begins in a whole bunch of different places, but it kind of begins there. And so they will expect to read what happens to Rain from there on in. And basically when you decide to be an independent thinker or being, all hell will break loose. They will be witness to her all hell breaking loose moment, and then follow her as she makes her journey into the heroine's tale.
So there's lots in there.
Yes.
The Oneironaut Ot 1 is 194 pages. I didn't ask Sheri-D to pick any particular part to read. I did want to use one of her poems, and maybe in a sense we'll circle back again to Diane de Prima. Diane de Prima, a revolutionary feminist poet whose work and influence spanned the beat 50s and 60s, the counterculture 60s and 70s. In New York in the 1960s, she co-edited the literary magazine The Floating Bear and more. In San Francisco, she co-founded the San Francisco Institute of Magical and Healing Arts, was a member of the Digger Collective, and more. She taught at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics, at the Naropa Institute in Colorado, and more. Sheri-D Wilson penned this poem titled Remembering Diane de Prima, an homage to the de Prima she knew. Diane de Prima died in 2020 at the age of 86.
A memory of Diane de Prima. Diane de Prima, Fierce woman, visionary woman, revolutionary woman, bird woman of song, lover and mother woman. She could turn on a breath, so watch your step. Be aware, be awake, be alive. And if you are, it will be well worth it. Diane de Prima, magician, paraphysician, alchemist of transmutation, illumination, divination woman. She was poet woman, poet woman. She was woman of poetry, poetry, woman of poetry. Diane sat down beside me, asked me how I broke my foot. We had lunch. She got me a glass of water, touched me with her healing power. And after that cup, she was my mentor, my teacher, my inspiration. With her, there was always a song, for she was a songbird. There was always a howl, for she was Loba. There was always magic, for she was a magician. There was always a garden, for she planted seeds of truth. She lived truth, for she was a beatnik, for she was a poet, and there was always a poem, and she lived the walk, and she lived the talk, and she lived the bottom line, the bottom line. She said, the only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. The imagination, memory, desire, sensation, and will, understanding. Diane de Prima taught me how to do her laundry. Yes, in her rickety basement in San Francisco, there were little tarot cards scattered all over the floor, face down around the washer and the dryer. She said, choose a card. I picked up a card and I turned it over and it was the world. She said, now read it. And I did. Perceive, positive, positive, perceive, positive. And she said, there's the shadow. Where's the shadow? Never see one-sided. She said, don't be afraid to see your own shadow. I did shrink. She said, don't do what you think is right. Do what is right. How you live is how you see, is how you think, is how you write. She said, I think the poet is the last person who is still speaking the truth when no one else dares to. I think the poet is the first person to begin the shaping and visioning of the new forms of the new consciousness when no one else has begun to sense it. I think these are the two of the most essential human functions. Diane de Prima blew my mind when she came to Vancouver, and we invited her to read with Ted Jones and Leroy Jones, and they all turned up in their jeans and their runners, and they threw down like birds in the wild. In Calgary, she opened our senses for the breath of high cliffs, and we looked down at the dancing clouds in the gully water. In San Francisco, Diane de Prima let me ramble through her hidden library where her grimoire lives. Off limits unless you ask the right question. Password, open your mind, open your heart to rare books. She said, buy rare books, buy the rare ones and wait for the question. The question, live, see, write yourself. That's all you have. In Revolutionary Letters, #1, she wrote, I have just realized that the stakes are myself. I have no other ransom money, nothing to break or barter but my life, my spirit measured out in bits, spread over the roulette table. I recoup what I can, nothing else to shove under the nose of the maître de jeu, nothing to thrust out the window, no white flag, this flesh, all I have to offer. To make the play with this immediate head, what it comes up with, my move as we slither over this go board, stepping always, we hope, between the lines. Diane de Prima, she told me to change myself first before I tried to change the world, and she was right and real and filled with love and truth. It wasn't easy to be around her for that reason. And really, when I think about it, those are the things that make it difficult to be around myself. She said, dig through my piles of papers and books and boxes and half boxes and every in sundry thing and find all my notebooks, she said. And they're all buried there. And I thought, oh my God, notebooks in that pile of papers, I'll never find a thing. So anyway, I dug through the piles in her office, which was also her living room. And I dug through the piles in her kitchen and the piles down the stairs and into the basement like a psychic bloodhound, literary divining in search of a wellspring of scraps. I discovered poetry, water, everywhere, lost and found. And there was this one little notebook, pocket-sized, and it was under this mountain of papers. And I opened it as she asked me to do. And I read it and I realized that she wrote the poems in that little book at the same age as I was then, standing there in her world of poetry and paper. I was the exact age that she was when she sat down at the table and offered me a glass of water that summer in Boulder at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics so many years ago. More than 30. And I went into her bedroom, to her bedside. She was lying there, not well of health, and drinking tea, reading. And I told her, look, I'm the same age as you were when I met you, when you wrote this poem in this notebook that I found that was buried under a lifetime of paper. And she said, oh, well, I'll read it now and remember. Where was I? So many scraps of paper, scraps of poetry, watercolors bleeding together into one another, merciless, like time and love and lovers and teachers and loss and learning and realms and light and shadows and death. And wait until you're ready. What do you want to know? What? No questions today? Well, here's a scrap of paper for you. She tore the memory out of the book. And she said, I'll sign it for you. And she did. And she said, that way you'll always have a scrap of me. Yeah. I have a lot more. I have memory. And that brings me to my imagination. Memory, sensation, desire, and will, understanding, love is the only way to live. Diane, Prima, I love you.
Sheri-D Wilson has a website that lists her many accomplishments, awards, and publications. Order of Canada, Stephen D. Stephenson Award for Poetry, books, short films, plays, recordings, and much more. The following are little snippets pulled from our conversations that may reveal a little more about this Oneironaut author. Speculative poetry, like the Oneironaut, gives free rein to the imagination of the author and the reader. Some say don't try to understand speculative poetry, experience it.
Why poetry?
You know, it's a really good question. And it's a question that I have thought about a fair amount over the years. I suppose it's because it's the only thing I can do. I don't know that I ever knew anything about poetry. When I was first writing poems, I didn't know anything about poetry. It was something that I was doing simply because it seemed right for me. And by that, I mean maybe the shorter lines, some rhyme, some jumping straight into the other realms and being there and being able to perceive it and I did this from when I was like 3 years old. I was actually writing at 3 years old. So, and I have this, and I've recently been given that writing. And I don't know, I think it was probably coming through from other lifetimes or something. I think that it does spark my imagination. And then there's the many years that I have studied symbology and Joseph Campbell and have lived by through ritual and through also ceremony, the aspects of symbology that affect us in our physical and material lives, and also in our spiritual and metaphysical lives. And so I assume that now. I don't make it up. It's in my being because of the years of integration and contemplation of these ideas involving iconography and symbology and how they guide us, affect us, influence us. I'm a little tiny bird. I do live to write, to breathe, to continue to dream. I'm kind of coming in under the radar. I can get on a bus, no one knows that I'm there, and I can listen to the world. They wouldn't let me into the U of C. No, you have no undergraduate degree. And I'm like, yeah, but I've had all these books produced and I've had these plays produced, like for real. And they were like, no, you have to come back and you have to study another language and all this university stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll start my own school. And I went to the Banff Center and said, let's start a school for spoken word. Because I think that's the fun part of being an artist, is that you always get to learn. And I love learning. It's been a good one for me. Also, if you stick with it long enough, you could do well at it. I live, as Ted Jones says, I live to write. I think that you're pushed to write certain things. And for me, I'm just like taking on the trip. So I just follow the trip. Once the trip is going, it's my job to catch it and follow it and try to make sense of it and decipher it in a lot of ways, and then to give other people clues so that they can follow it. That said, the world is obviously in an upheaval and is obviously going through a massive change. These other realms that we get to explore are really interesting. I don't feel like I'm lifting things out of the air, and I think it's more, for me, it more moves through me. It's just coming out. It's just, and I'm speaking for, I don't want it to sound like it's this, the ravings of a mad woman, but it's kind of is, I guess. And the muse, as you know, if you want to talk about the Greeks, the muses, I feel, do move through you, and they move through other people when you're around them as well, and you're catching what people say. And you know, I'm not so much a lake person, I'm more urban, and so I'm when I'm sitting by the lake, I'm sitting by lots of movement. There's a lot of more movement for me. And like James Joyce had to walk every day, I'm the same kind of creature. And it might be the Irish root, I don't know, but I walk a lot and pick things up. And I like sort of lots of kind of silence, but also action. I'm a little tiny bird.
There is a subgenre of poetry called sci-fi haiku, which is haiku written with a science fiction bent. Here's one small attempt at that. Moonless night, still lake. My canoe drifts into the Milky Way. Thank you for listening. The Poetry Joint now drifts away for another month, Sheri-D Wilson, many thanks. We will talk again.